this is officially the start of this memento of Michael Esposito, which is me. And I'm going to be asked a series of questions, and I'm going to answer it to the best of what's left of my brain. Okay?
That sounds like a deal to me.
Yeah. So, questions, please.
Thank you, Michael, for agreeing to do this. When did you come to Woodstock?
I came to Woodstock in the fall of 1967 to rehearse for an album with Happy and Artie Traum. And let's see, that was my first glimpse of Woodstock, and I knew right away that this is where I wanted to live forever. The next time I came up was with my band, the Blues Magoos, that we were playing with around the country. We had a number 5 record, and we went all over the place and toured with English groups and stuff. And I came up here with them to rehearse for an album. And we have rehearsed at the bottom of Ohio Mountain Road, and I just spent my nights walking up around Ohio Mountain, and just couldn't believe how beautiful it was here. And so I bought my cemetery plot the first year I was here. That'll be like 1968, and been here ever since. And the magic has not worn off. So.
What were some of the jobs you've done since you've been here?
Let's see. Mostly I was writing my book and doing cartoons, playing music with everybody in town. Actual day jobs, I worked in the laundromat when it first opened, and I worked at Sunflower for 2 years, at a health food store, and I tried to get employed at House, but they said I was overqualified. So, and I'm still applying every year, 45 years later, and Jody won't give me a job. So, I don't hold it against her, but I really want to work at House and Son hardware store. It's the perfect hardware store. It's Mayberry's hardware store. I love it.
Are these the books you were writing?
Yeah, I was writing this. This is poetry and drawings of my walks in the woods, basically. Memories of, like, residual images that I remember from walking in the woods. And poetry inspired by reading Thoreau and Indian saints and Krishnamurti. The whole town was in love with Indian mystics in those days, and it still is. There's 7 yoga centers. And then I discovered this little character from India about that time, Swami Salami, and I pictured him sitting on the green, on the bench, kind of looking at all the characters in town, and wondering, what is this place called America, and what is this place called Woodstock? So I started doing little humorous cartoons, and did this book. Just made 100 copies, and Joanne has one, and he's just commenting on his arrival in America and the new world, and how new it is and how strange it is. And I'm still doing it 35 years later. It's still in the Woodstock Times after 35 years. So that's a pretty good long run for a cartoon. Okay, here's a Swami t-shirt. And he's, of course, saying, "So this is Woodstock." And matter of fact, Chester, the sign maker, is going to put him on the bulletin board coming at the corner of 375, saying, "So this is Woodstock." I said, okay, you can do that if you want. A friend of mine calls Woodstock Mayberry LSD. And I think it's pretty accurate. Okay, the qualities. The first person I met was Barney Yurtson, Ole's father. He was playing accordion up at the Pinecrest Inn up there on top of the hill there. And I think Harry Wolven was playing trumpet. No, not Harry Wolven. anyway, the police chief was playing trumpet, and Barney was playing accordion. I just sat there and said, this is pretty far away from New York City, and it's nice and slow. I love it. It was a lot less traffic then than there is now. And I liked it because it was like Mayberry. The police, Cyril, my bike shop employer at that time, was a constable. And there were 2 constables and 1 police chief, and only the chief was allowed to carry a gun. The constables got flashlight and a nightstick. Just like Mayberry. I loved it. And they had to use their own cars. And now we have like 14 police cars, but that's the modern age. Those are basically the qualities, just the innocence, simplicity of the town. Yeah.
What's the biggest change you've seen in Woodstock?
Biggest change, besides traffic? Traffic is a given. That's going to happen. Biggest change is the median income, I would think, to put it technically. I'm judging by the number of concrete trucks that go by every day and water trucks filling swimming pools in the summer. That gives you an indication of what's going on in the mountains. And the houses that are being built. You can tell by the driveway because it's wider than the road that you're riding on. And these gates and with electronic surveillance, and I'm just assuming that they're very wealthy people, but they may not be, but I didn't see that when I first came here. I just saw what was here, and every now and then somebody would build a nice house. But it seems to be just bigger proportions of everything now, of Woodstock. My favorite characteristic is the industries that were here in the early 1800s. The glass factory, the quarries, the chestnut industry. Most of your cabinetry in New York City was probably Woodstock chestnut and furniture. Just those rough industries were what I was fascinated by, that they used this little road called Glasgow Turnpike to take shipments to the river to go down to New York City. And I rehearsed with my drummer in my band with Mark Black on Mink Hollow Road, which is actually the beginning of a road that goes up to, where is that town? Hunter? Hunter, I think, Tannersville. And there's no road left, and they carried ox carts full of wood and stone down to Glasgow Turnpike on that road. What an age it must have been, you know? That when I see that road, I try and imagine what it was like and how rough it must have been to get a load of bluestone down to New York City from that little point on top of a mountain. That age was so prevalent, and the tanning industry, you know, right in the middle of town we had a tanning industry. So that goes back to Greenwich Village. Before I was playing electric music, or also during the early time, I was playing bass with folk musicians and harmonica with folk musicians around the era of Bob Dylan and James Taylor and Bruce Gibson, and they were all down on McDougal Street playing in these basement clubs, and the fancier clubs were above ground, but I was just available to play whatever they wanted, harmonica or bass or guitar. And so I got to know Happy and Artie and Bob Dylan and James Taylor and all these people. And they all were coming up here to, I don't know, just to party or play or whatever. So I wound up coming here too with Happy and Artie, with their album. And that was the transition. It was through music, yeah. I ride every day, winter and summer, unless the snow is over my wheels, you know. If I can't see the top of the fire hydrant, I don't go riding. I don't ride as far as I used to. I used to go to Phoenicia for pancakes twice a week, and I don't do that anymore. Not that I can't do it, it's just that biking has become more of a meditation than transportation at this stage. thank the Lord I'm still able to bike as much as I want and as far as I want, but I treat it more as a slow meditation now, kind of like there's a Zen aspect to it. It's a slowing down process rather than, and the guys with all the suits on are riding by me and waving at 40 miles an hour, and I'm just sort of plodding along. And that's the way I like biking now, yeah. And the back roads, I love the back roads. The traffic in town, I've been asked by my friend Lou, who made my beautiful signs and who lives with me, to do something about the traffic on Main Street for bike riders. And my only solution is, since it's a New York State road, you can't really get them to widen it without, giving Governor Cuomo something, or some kind of reimbursement. You're not going to, it's a political thing. So you really can't do that. All you can do is just stay off the main road and ride on Broadview and Plockman and, Cooper Lake Road. Go out to those places to do your riding, even the reservoir, I had a fat tire bike, an old Schwinn, and in the 40s when I was young, and then never really touched it again until I came to Woodstock. I got a car for my graduation present from college. I drove to New York City in my Corvette and parked it in an underground garage and never drove it again for 4 years. And it was white when I parked it, and it was black when I sold it to the parking lot attendant on my way up to Woodstock. I just took one look at the avenues and the congestion. I said, I'm not going to drive in New York. And riding a bike in New York, I never gave it a thought. It's really weird. Until I got here, and I wanted to go out further than you can walk. I wanted to see Lake Hill. I wanted to see Xena. I wanted to go out Maverick Road all the way to 28 and go up around Glenford. And I couldn't do that. I didn't want to do it in a car. So I gave up cars in 1977. I had a 1942 Dodge pickup truck. And I think I gave it to a Peter Walther. And that was the end of cars for me. And it's been bicycles ever since. Then I met Ciro, and he had a little bike shop behind the plumbing store on Rock City Road, and started assembling bikes there. And after he died, I inherited his tools, some of which were over 100 years old Schwinn tools from the Schwinn factory. And I still have them. And the next chance I got, which was this barn, thanks to Joanne and Ken, I said, this is it. And I opened up, 30 years ago? About 30 years ago. Been doing it here every day ever since, except for winter. The 4 months in the winter, I make art. Right now, my apartment is so crowded I can't paint, but I'm going to move out to the Rupco place and get a big apartment. So I'll start painting again.
Do you still play bass?
Yeah, play with Mark Black, mostly out of town. For some reason, he doesn't book gigs except for Bearsville Theater and Maverick. So it's very rare that I play, but I joined a band called Fish and Chicken with Pete Rose and J.R. Longyear. And we're playing, every week somewhere, so I'm still playing. I love it. People from, I think it's about 4 counties now, drop bikes off here. I find bikes by my door at least once a week. And they say, here, these are for you, and I either use them for parts if they're too rusty, or I make a new bike out of it and sell it for never more than $100. If it's a really good bike, it's $100, but mostly they're $25 to $40. I give bikes to the hospitals, I give bikes to the jails for people who are getting out and have no car. Kids come by all day, they need a bike for an hour. I just say, ride that one. And oddly enough, they always bring it back. I've had 1 bike stolen in 30 years. They climbed up in the loft and stole a really nice bike and left me a brand new pair of sneakers in trade for it. So it wasn't really a theft.
It was a trade.
It was a trade.
Yeah.
I still can't get over that. It was funny. I was born in West Point, the military academy, in 1940. Went down to my father was with Eisenhower in the Second World War, and I went down to live in Virginia and Washington during the war, and then came back up to West Point after the war. And spent my teenage years in West Point. Went to high school in the next town over, Highland Falls. And then both my brothers became cadets. And my father was a great ukulele player. We used to watch the Arthur Godfrey show together. He taught me ukulele, bought me a great guitar when I was 13. And I was playing with a country and western band when I was 13 in Highland Falls. And you know, that was my youth. And then he saw that I was drawing and sketching and playing music. So when I wanted to go to art school, he didn't say no. He didn't want me to be a cadet. So I'm thankful to him to this day for that. Because otherwise it would be a whole different story.
So you started doing your art.
I was, yeah, well, I trained under some famous professors at Syracuse, and I went to New York in '62 with a job application available at a major advertising firm, and I lasted 2 weeks. I gave my suits away, and I went down to the village and got my guitar out, and the rest is what happened up till today. I just wasn't cut out for sitting behind a desk, and you know, I was more cut out for playing music at night and sleeping during the day, I guess. I don't know.
Well, I guess you weren't also cut out that much for a military career. So
No, I would have done it if my father wanted me to, but luckily he knew that I wasn't. He was very sensitive that way. Yeah. Yeah.
Would you tell us about Father Francis?
Father
and
Francis.
Your time at the Church on the Mount?
Oh yeah, Father Francis. How I first got up there, I don't really remember how I went to the church. I think everybody was going in town, and who was this guy up there that they went to see all the time? And also it was rumored that Bob Dylan sat in the room behind the altar during the Mass. And he actually did. So I went up, and I just fell in love with this wonderful guy. The first thing we had in common was that he knew Jack Benny's real name, Benny Kowalski. And I told him that I had played on the Jack Benny show in the 60s. So he told me all about Jack Benny. And a lot of famous people came up to see him, Father Francis. He was sent here, brought up here to take care of the Whitehead's son, who had problems on the social level. And Father Francis was his overseer. I don't know how much good he did, because Father Francis was kind of a rapscallion in his own right. But we all fell in love with him. We had a wonderful choir. Jed Welsh was the Yale choir director, and he was our choir director. They had an old pump organ that the mice had eaten out of the bellows, and it hardly sounded like anything. But that was our choir, called the Last Temptations. And Father Francis made me a priest, because I just kept hanging out there. He said, well, I might as well have you doing something. So he made me a priest. And Orthodox, it was part of the Orthodox Church of North and South America, which is connected loosely to the Romanian Orthodox Church. And it still is through Jack Nelson, who's I was playing music with at the time, with Greg Dinger and Jack Nelson and Robbie Turner. And he was just coming as a parishioner, but now he's a deacon up there. And the bishop lives in New Jersey, John LeBoux. So I lived there. I put a piece of plywood off the side of the building and hung a tarp over it, and that was my room. And I had an army sleeping bag, and that was my bed. And there was a little back room with a kitchen and a little workshop for Father Francis. There were several rooms but now it's just a bare building. There's no more rooms. But there's been a baptistry built in the back. So it's a legitimate Orthodox church with the Tibetan temple looming over it. You know, it's quite a scene. And I don't go up there very much anymore, but I have great memories of Father Francis and how his sermons were as good as anything that Jack Benny ever did. Really, really great. uproarious, wonderful, dry English wit. You know, he was great, and he was a fount of history about not just the church, but history about the old world and the new world, because he still was the old world, living up on top of this mountain in the new world, and that was the pull that he had. You know, that people who had any kind of sensibility at all were drawn to him. Yeah.
Do you have a phrase or credo that guides your life?
Better to wear out than rust out, and that's why I ride my bike. And I think Father Francis said that because he was very active, even into his 90s. What else is the other one? I think I wrote notes here. I like better to wear out than rust out, but there's another one here. Oh, that's it. Better to wear out than rust out. Right. Yeah, that's my favorite thing. I think I love that one.
So you've been in Woodstock for a good part of your life. I mean, you came here.
Yeah, it'll be in 4 years. It'll be half a century. Yeah.
So how do you feel as like how does it work for you and all the changes you've probably been through as one goes through in your lifetime?
I like it. Well, I like it now because I've made it so it's as least hectic as possible. When I came here, I felt the slowness of the place, and that's why I'm still here. And it slowed me down because when you're young, you have a tendency to bite off more than you can chew. I think that's a pretty good way of saying it. And I was going to do that, but I left that music business because you're constantly flying on airplanes, and I think your bodily time clock never catches up with you. And you're eating plastic food at Holiday Inn, not sleeping much. I didn't do any drugs, but I was watching people kill themselves with drugs, and rock and roll people, you know. So, what was the question? I'm doing my Professor Irwin Corey. What was the question?
Okay. You can take it where you want. I was just thinking here you've lived the major part of your adult life. And
Oh,
you've
yeah.
been through a lot of different things in your life.
I just haven't left. Since I got here, I went once with Mark Black to California to play for some people who had been in prison for living in the dump in Oakland, California. We went out there to do a benefit. Mark Black is Mr. Benefit. He loves to do benefits. And Phil Void, of course. But yeah, that's it. I just felt that this was it when I got here, and that was the transformation, was going from a fast life to a more relaxed pace. And I don't have any urge to. This band that I was with are always saying, "Come on, we're going to go to Spain. We're going to go on a tour." They're still touring, this old band, and I say, "I don't have any ID. Sorry." When I went to California, I had to take my clothes off in the back room because I had no ID. I had a library card and a Social Security card, and that was it. I had my birth certificate. I thought, sure, that would be enough. But no, you have to have some kind of zip code or something. I don't know what it is, but I didn't have it. So I can't go anywhere unless I get a non-driver's license. And you have to have ID to get a non-driver's license. So I'm stuck here. Thank you. Mayberry RFD was the later incarnation of Andy Griffith's show. It was called Mayberry RFD. And my friend said, Mayberry LSD. That's the joke, yeah. Although it's not, there is a little heroin problem with young people here, but as far as I can see, the drug scene is pretty under control. It's mostly just the usual thing. Soon to be legalized. We had 7 clubs when I moved here, and a musician could make his or her rent, actually, and maybe buy a car. Because you played for the tip jar, except for the Playhouse and Bearsville Theater, where you actually got a guarantee. But there seemed to be more club activity, and what the change is that now it's getting back to that again. We do have 7 clubs at this very moment. We have the Harmony, the Pizza Shop, the Pinecrest, the Maverick, Playhouse, Bearsville. We don't have the Whitewater anymore. We have New World Home Cooking. We have more than 7 clubs, and right in the town limits. So it's really, it's good. This music scene is thriving and alive. The Colony is soon to open. A young couple bought it, and they're going to make it into a 7-night-a-week nightclub with a restaurant. So it seems to be having a resurgence. And we have some world-class restaurants. I'm not doing an ad for Woodstock, but we do have some world-class restaurants. The corner cover was owned by Pan Copeland in those days, in the 60s, and she had a farm out down on John Joy Road, about 5 miles from here, in a big field, and she let the hippies use it to camp in first. There were tents and bonfires and on the weekends, and then we started playing music naturally, and then someone built a little stage, and a lot of the people who played at the big Woodstock Festival played there. Hendrix, Janis Joplin, part of the band, and all the locals like me. We all played there on the weekends, and when it got too big, of course, the neighbors shut it down, and then we did it for 4 years. Every now and then there will be an outdoor concert somewhere, but that's about all. That was a wonderful little moment there. And there was a garage on Sled Hill that's the footprint of that garage. It's just a parking lot now, it's nothing there. But everybody who played in the Woodstock Festival, they were coming up to this area to record or rehearse or just to hang out. And they wound up playing there because it wasn't really a nightclub, it was just a garage. And they made a little bar, and the public was not invited, so they felt safe to go there. These were very famous musicians, so that's a famous footprint. And the bench, one of the benches was by the side of this garage, and people kept taking pieces for souvenirs, and there was no bench left. Yeah. But that's a little bit of history that people don't know about. We were in the next tent playing our music, and the reggae music was so loud that I couldn't hear my own amplifier. It must have had 5,000 watts of bass coming out.
Well, that goes with that kind of music.
Yeah, yeah, it's beyond belief.
And they had multiple stages going at the same
And there was
time.
there was a tent with a big screen, with just flashing lights on the screen, and this trance music played at a tremendously high volume. And kids were there for like 4 hours with their arms up. They didn't even know where they were. They were trancing to this light and sound. Quite an experience. But kind of a modern version of what we used to do with my band. We had theremins and light shows, and we had outfits that lit up. A woman from MIT made these outfits that lit up, and they had neon piping, and then we would turn all the lights out in the theater, and all you would see was dancing flowers with Sylvania night lights, and the kids loved it. It was like the first light shows. And I had theremins and echo boxes and fuzz tones, and it was like the first, what do they call it now? Well, it's just sounds, with a rhythm track. And we call it science friction now. That's what it's called now. But we were like one of the first bands to do that. And we did it on Jack Benny's show. We were playing a song called Tobacco Road. And in the middle of it, we dropped the whole song, and we were just banging and crashing and playing noise for about 2 minutes. And then we went back into the song and finished with a big theremin, screaming theremin. And at the end of it, Jack Benny pulls cotton out of his ears and says, "That was great, boys. Tomorrow everybody will be humming it." Perfect, you know. And then he made me describe psychedelic music to him. And so I went into this long dissertation about cosmic influences and the unification of mind and body and everything. And he said, "I knew that. You know, you can hear his voice. I knew that. It was good. It was a perfect meeting of wackiness of us with the wackiness, the sublime wackiness of Jack Benny. And on that same TV show was Liberace and Astrud Gilberto. So he had these acts sandwiching us. And it was just great. His total wacko sense of humor.
Do you
I was
remember
glad
what
to be
year
part
that
of it.
was?
What was that?
Do you remember what year that was?
I think it was our last, like 66, I think. End of 66. And we played all the daytime shows and the California shows like Smothers Brothers and all that. But then it was, for me, it was over in 67 when I came up here. And they're still doing it, so it's great. And the visitors, you can hear almost every language on a weekend here. You hear these families walking by speaking in who knows what, not just the Northern European languages either. I mean, they're from Australia and everywhere, New Zealand, and it's people come here from all over the world. It's really a destination. I get a little irritated if I really have to go to the bathroom and I can't find it. I have to go home to go to the bathroom, you know. I get a little, it's clogged. It gets clogged up because it's a tiny little town and there's one little main strip, you know. So there are moments when I wish that it wasn't quite so popular. But I don't resent it because it's good for business. And it allows, we have amazing stores here. Some of the stores are very kind of like New York almost. The windows are beautiful. They rival New York store windows. And the taste and the elegance. Yeah.
Have you ever had any need for any of the emergency services that the town has?
I've tripped on a piece of bluestone, I guess 10 years ago. No, not 10 years. Yeah, about 10. No, I was living in town maybe 13 years ago, and fell over and cracked my thigh bone. And none other than Elliot Landy picked me up in his arms and took me and threw me in my bed. And I said, thanks, and he left out the door. And I was living behind Walkabout, and so I laid there for a while and I said, this isn't good. And I hobbled over to across the street to a friend's house and they drove me to the hospital. And I had a couple titanium pins put in there. It's fine. That was my closest call to a real emergency. Yeah. Nothing else. I never had to go in the ambulance. Thank God. Final words. Wow. Well, I do want the Historical Society to show these once a year. That would be really cool, I think. Like, maybe even at the film festival. I don't know. It wouldn't. No, it's strictly for Woodstockers, I think, for people, because they wouldn't know who. They don't know who Albert Cash Dollar is. Oh gosh. Final words is this I didn't think about. So I wake up every day. Thankfully, I wake up glad to be here. Not just because it's Woodstock, just glad to be on the planet. And I try to keep that thought of the planet in mind. Whenever you get embroiled in details, this isn't good, this is great, why did you do that, why can't you be better, that kind of thing, I realize all I have to do is snap my focus to the fact that I'm on a ball in space and how small this little argument is, or even this little pleasure is. And it does it for me every time. And something relaxes inside, and you're able to let go of defending yourself or being aggressive or any of those things. It's kind of like a philosophy lecture here, I guess. But it works for me, just to realize how small I am and how small we are. And how small our galaxy is. I love reading Bob Berman's column in the paper, because he just takes you out there and talks about, my favorite thing that he ever said, from quoting from science, of course, and it's not his revelation, but it took a nanosecond for the Big Bang to happen. Whether this is true or not, we don't know. But judging by the DNA of the planet, they're assuming all this. It took less than a nanosecond for it to happen, and 3 minutes for the entire universe to happen, of our time. And so far they haven't discovered an edge of it. So I think about that, and then my problem doesn't seem so big. And I guess I'll leave you with that. So your problems aren't as big as you think they are. But don't stop thinking. Otherwise you'll rust out.